This time I'd like to call the Budget Workshop Committee to order. And if I will, I'll ask Angela to please do roll call.
Old. Hannum. Here. Lewis.
Here.
Moon. Present. We have a quorum.
Okay. Now for the emergency announcement, I guess everybody just follows the exits to the following, that way and that way. Hopefully that way. Just don't run over me on your way out. This time I'll ask if there's any public input on items on the agenda. Okay. Seeing none, presentations tonight is a special called budget workshop and it's for information only. The budgets are to be presented tonight and will be presented in the order they're listed on your agenda. The first budget we're going to bring forward is the library. Casey?
All right, am I on? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman Moon and members of the Finance Committee. I'm really excited that you're back at the library again this year. I have some information. Go out. Just a little snapshot about the library and what we do. Before I get started, though, I'd like to ask all of the staff members that are library staff members to stand up that were able to attend tonight. The ones that aren't here are working. Anyway, thank y'all. Anyway, this is just a little front and back sheet that talks about the library itself, and it gives a little breakdown at the top about how we're funded, which is the part that I want to draw attention to so everyone kind of understands. We have three funding bodies. We have the county, the city of Maryville, and the city of Alcoa. And the breakdown is 50% of our funding comes from the county, 40% comes from Maryville, and 10% comes from Alcoa. And then the shortfall we make up with our revenues. We have about 55 staff members. We're open 70 hours a week, and we cost residents $16.26 a year. We have 87,000 card holders, which is a very high number. And we see about 8,000 people a week in the main building. That doesn't include the counts for our meetings, so it's probably closer to 10,000. And then under the Did You Know part, it just lists some of the information about what gives our outputs. And it also talks about our collaboration. We have 3 boards. So the Library Board of Trustees, which is appointed by the 3 funding bodies, actually operates the library. But we also have 2 501c3 boards. We have the Friends, and then we have the Foundation. Those are independent of the Library Board. The Library Board does not vote on those. And the Foundation can only fund capital, and the Friends can only fund programming. So there's limitations to what the 2 bodies may fund, and the board is independent, so we have to go and request, and they can choose to fund or not. They're wonderful supports. The library is only asking for an increase with respect to the Evergreen salary findings. We would like very much to bring our salaries in line with the county. I have quite a few staff members that have served 20 and 30 years that are getting into the 5-6 year range of retirement, and they haven't had raises for 12 years. So we need to take care of our people. Our request is $15,655 on top of our budget from last year. This would be split up between the 3 funding bodies. So the actual increase for the county would be $57,827.50. Beyond that, I just want to take a few minutes to discuss some of the initiatives that are coming down. The library has been very active in the Workforce Development Committee that's working across the county, as well as the Reentry Committee. And the Chamber, there are partnerships with the Chamber and Adult Ed and Alcoa to support workforce development. But we are looking at focusing our resources on 4 initiatives next year. We want to implement efficient and effective internal and external information creation and distribution systems. We'll want to provide training opportunities in advanced industries to support business locally that needs STEM-trained employees. We want to provide collaborative workspaces where library customers can work with each other and with technology. And we want to participate in closing the internet technology access gap for residents. Currently, around 11% of the county is disenfranchised geographically. In other words, they don't have access to high-speed internet, and they're not going to have it. It has nothing to do with how much money they have. So as part of the Maryville City Schools Outreach Program, we are going to be one of the sites that expands internet access out into the parking lot, as well as provides access to hotspot boxes that people can circulate, check out, they can rent and take home. Anywhere that you have a cell signal, you can get high-speed internet. So, questions for me?
Internet access that they would come in and take with them. Do you have a contract or a bulk purchase of bandwidth or time?
It's unlimited bandwidth, and the boxes, what we're starting with is T-Mobile, and the Friends group is supporting us in the purchase of the equipment, and then we'll rent them for $2 a day. So that will recoup our cost, plus a little bit to help us cover if boxes go missing and that kind of thing.
Will the library be billed by the amount of data that's transferred?
No, it's unlimited. We couldn't do it if we had to do that. The only rule is they can't take them out of the country. No international fees. Okay, in closing, I just want to thank y'all for all your hard work. I know this is a difficult process, and we really appreciate all that you do to support the library.
Next, we have the schools.
Good afternoon, Budget Committee. Fantastic to be with you today. Want to say a special thank you to our good friends here at the library, and especially for providing the great food and beverage over here. Really appreciate them. I wish we'd have all of our meetings over here. Matter of fact, I like the atmosphere. It's nice. It certainly is good to be with you, and tonight we're going to be presenting our 2015-16 budget request to you, the Budget Committee. Want to begin with a brief introduction and provide some context for our budget request, and just take a minute to essentially, I guess, review, if you would. The school system receives revenue really from 3 main sources, and we receive revenue from the state through our BEP formula. which is about 54%, makes up about 54% of our budget. And then our local, we have two local forms of local taxes. That's property and sales tax that go into that. And that makes up about 41% of our budget. And then federal and miscellaneous, a few other little revenue sources there make up about 5%, which is the remaining portion. So that's where the money comes from. I think that there sometimes is a misconception about we ask for an $80 million budget. I think some folks think that all of that's coming from the local source, and it's split up between those three revenue sources. Where does the money go? We primarily, it primarily goes to salary and benefits for our employees. We are a people-driven organization in the schools, and so about 85% of our budget is made up of salaries and benefits, and about 15% is operations. Just a little historical, briefly. Our fiscal year 12-13, we had an actual spend of $80.9 million. In 13-14, we had an actual spend of $79.9 million. We had a negative 1.2% decrease there. That was the year we cut 84 positions, including 24 teaching positions and about 54 TAs, 5 maintenance custodian, and 1 administrative person from the central office level. Fiscal year 14-15, we brought you a balanced budget, which is the first time in at least 14 years. We were really pleased to be able to do that, and that, of course, was of $81.9 million. We project to spend about $81.3 in this current school year. So our fiscal year 15-16 budget we're bringing before you tonight, that was approved last Thursday by the Board of Education, is a $86,404,000 budget request, or about a 5% increase over what was budgeted in 14-15. Now, let me talk to you briefly about how we got here. How did we get to this number? The budget building process is one that really begins each year for us. Is in the fall. We have a all-day board workshop and staff retreat. The board and staff meet together, and we review our strategic goals, our strategic planning initiatives, and we set budget priorities by looking at what our needs are. What do we need to accomplish these goals? Then established a philosophy, generally speaking, to say that we're going to take a measured, balanced, and strategic approach to the budget. In other words, we're not going to bring you an $11 million increase in one year. We've got a lot of needs, but we feel like that we need to be very strategic about how do we budget those things over an appropriate amount of years. So taking a measured, balanced, and strategic approach. We then went to our principals and leadership teams across the district and asked for their input. So they made recommendations to us about what they felt like that they needed to accomplish the goals of the school system. And then our staff reviews all of those requests and makes some prioritization of those requests. The budget committee of the school system is made up of the board chair, the director of schools, and the fiscal director. We're the ones that put that budget proposal or draft it, and then we deliver it to the board. And after 2 open meetings to discuss the budget on March the 26th of 2015, the Board of Education approved our budget request that's before you tonight of $86.4 million. Talk to you about the budget priorities that we have that are reflected in our budget. We decided that we wanted to invest in the people that we have in our school system through compensation. We also have a great need in capital improvements. We have a lot of really great buildings that have been built over the last several years, but we also have a lot of older and aging buildings that really need a lot of work. You consider that Heritage High School in 2016 will be turning 40 years old. And if you can believe it, very, very little has been done in terms of updating inside that building. In fact, you'll find a lot of original furniture there. So there's a great deal of need there. And in 2019, William Blount will be turning 40 as well, just as two examples. Technology. We said all along that our students are going to graduate and they're going to make their way in this world, regardless of what their career path is. They're going to be in a technology-rich environment. And so we have to invest a lot more in terms of our technology program. We also are going to be asked by the state to do online testing. In fact, we did that with our writing assessment this year. We have some principals here that could probably give a seminar on what that's like to try to schedule all those students through labs and how disruptive that is to the educational process when you're having to do all this online testing. It will be magnified next year as we go to online testing in every grade and on EOCs and in our 3-8 levels as well. So technology, textbooks, and also classroom investments, both human resources and material resources in the classroom. So I think the budget that's before you reflects those priorities. Talk to you a little bit about efficiencies in our school system. I think that goes right along with our budget proposal. And some things that don't quite often get seen or are overlooked a little bit is we're asking for additional resources here to fund our school system, but we're also looking internally on how can we better meet our goals with the resources that we have. And I think that one key indicator of that, any conversation around efficiency in a school system really begins with a conversation around per pupil expenditure. It is the benchmark, not only in our state, but in the nation in terms of how efficient a school system can be as you look at it and compare it to its performance. And so you look at the Blount County school system currently sitting at about $8,851 per student. That's our per pupil expenditure. Compare that to the state's average, which is at $9,346. So we're below the state average by $495 per student. And keep in mind now that the state average is 47th in the nation. So we're not clicking on all cylinders, or we're not funding schools in Tennessee at a high level. And so certainly I think that you can see that the Blount County schools with $8,851 below the state average, that presents some challenges for us. Now, the two city systems here in Blount County, both are above the state average, and very fortunate for them, certainly. We're considerably below those two systems as well in terms of our per pupil expenditure. But you may also like to know, as an added note, that if you look at the 12 school systems just in the Knox County area, you look at those per pupil expenditure comparisons, and we rank 11th out of those 12. Only Union County has a per pupil expenditure lower than the Blount County schools. Now, take that and look at performance, where the Blount County schools' overall performance has been at the state or above the state average in almost every metric that we measure schools by. So I think that you can say that the Blount County schools is both efficient and effective. Let me give you a couple of examples. Mowing. A few years ago, what we discovered is that we're putting a full-time custodian in some of our schools on a mower, and we're having them mow the lawn and weed whack for the duration of sometimes 2 full days. That's 2 full days. They're not in the building, not cleaning the building. Well, so what we found is that through attrition, we could eliminate some of those positions and subcontract that service out to a lawn mowing service. We've done that now at 11 campuses, and we believe that we will project our savings around $75,000 over about 18 months here, over the last 18 months related to that. So that's an example. I want to say also our maintenance division. We eliminated 3. We had 16. We're down to 13 in our maintenance division. Well, listen to what our maintenance division has been doing to create efficiencies. They reworked 4 retention ponds affected by erosion and sinkholes, and assisted by our Blount County Highway Department, which are always so good to work with our school system. Really appreciate their help. We did this on 4 campuses. If we would have contracted those services out, we probably would have spent in excess of about $500,000 more than what we did. So by doing it internally, we were able to save the taxpayers about $500,000. We just did a retrofit fuel oil boiler. We transitioned it to propane due to admissions at Lanier, saving about $50,000. So there's plenty of examples. I've got a sheet on that if you'd like to see that, but I wanted to share that information with you tonight. And administrative costs. I think quite often you'll hear about, well, the Taj Mahal. They got all these crazy administrators running around over there. I don't know if they're crazy, but anyway, they got a lot of administrators running around and so forth. Let's talk about that just for 1 second. And if you look at our central administration of the Blount County Schools, we spend about 2% of our total budget on central administration, which is way, way, way below the national average and below, I think, most state measures related to that. Through our BEP funding formula, we earn 14 supervisors through that, and we exist with 8. I think that's an efficiency as it relates to administrative costs. Out of a study of the 8 most similar school systems in terms of size, out of those 8, we rank 7th lowest in principal to student ratio out of those 8. So I think, again, that shows that we are doing a great job in terms of making sure that we're not overinflated with principals. Believe me, we're not, because the standards have changed, the requirements have changed on principals, and their job has become much more labor intensive than it's ever been. And we'll probably have to look at adding principals in budgets in the future, no question. So again, taking a measured and balanced approach to our budget, I'd like to now take a look at our current year we're in is $82 million, and our request is $86,404, and that's an increase of $4,400,000 for next year. Anticipated revenue is $84,700,000, and this presents a budget deficit of about $1,704,000. What are those things that you want to increase the budget about? Let's take a look and just give you some examples. I know you have the budget before you, but just to take a look at a couple of those things. Increasing compensation for both certified and classified positions is about $2,300,000. 13 teacher instructional positions, which is $810,000. A good many of those positions are restoring positions that we lost. You remember I said earlier, 2 years ago, we lost about 24 teaching positions. So we're asking to restore some of those in this. And then a few of those are just repurposing some positions that better align to meet our goals. Just to give you a few examples, we've got in the budget several elementary teachers, a middle school teacher. We're not going to meet our BEP ratios. We know right now, sitting with the student population that we have in one specific middle school, we'll be hiring a teacher there because we have to meet those BEPs. Some of these increases are really non-negotiable. They're driven by state law or State Board of Education requirements. We're going to hire 2 teachers, one at each one of our high schools. We have to have an English teacher at Heritage and a chemistry physics / teacher at William Blount High School. We really need to increase from a part-time communications director to a full-time communications and workforce development coordinator. Work-based learning is becoming a real initiative for the Blount County Schools and will be a high profile for us related to our next strategic plan. And we need somebody to drive that in terms of taking companies and what their needs are and making sure that our students have opportunities to engage with work-based learning so that they're in apprenticeships and internships and job shadowing that really inform their decision making as they go forward in their lives. Yes. I've got a whole list of that, and I'll be glad to share that with you, but I think I'll just go on for right now. Technology and textbook investments will be a $764,000 additional dollars. These positions and technology investments will support our efforts to produce students who are college and career ready and prepared to meet the challenges of the 21st century. Now, let me give you an example there. One thing that we would really look forward to do is establishing an advanced manufacturing program. We have been working with Denso and Alcoa and Cherokee Millwright and several other businesses and manufacturing base in our county to develop an advanced manufacturing program. We have all of the key essential elements for those programs. We just need to have a teacher and we need to have some resources in order to be able to do that. And that'll really go a long way toward supporting the needs of our growing manufacturing base. Increase the number of students who are attending college and technical school and some post-secondary experience leading to a degree or industry certification. Continue to sustain the success of our ACT scores, our dual enrollment, AP courses, and establish a robust work-based learning program for our students. A couple of no-choice operational expenses. I've talked a lot now about the human capital side. Talk a little bit about, just briefly, on our operational side, the no-choice operational costs. We have increases including utilities. Then we have physical and occupational therapy services. And we subcontract that out, but we believe that's going to be an additional $50,000. A general liability insurance of $136,000. Small capital in maintenance and upkeep of our buildings and facilities, which is around $196,000. And that includes some HVAC needs, maintenance equipment, classroom desks and chairs that desperately need to be replaced in some places, and some just general facility needs. So, in summary, that sums up our operational side. And you know that we currently are blessed with $1.07 of the tax rate for schools. And I'd like to talk to you now about the capital budget part of our presentation here tonight. And so what the school board approved and what we are recommending to you is that we'd like you to consider establishing and initiating an Education Capital Fund 189. And what we're proposing to do is to take 7 cents out of our allocation and move that into the Education Capital Fund 189. what that would do is that generates revenue of $2.2 million. And that all would be designated and restricted for the purpose of major capital improvement. We have a 5-year capital improvement plan. I think most of you have had it in maybe in your packets in the past as for information only. But if you don't have access to it, certainly we'll make that available to you. But for the purpose of this budget, we would like to address, desperately need to address the HVAC systems and upgrades at Heritage High School. They are in disrepair. There are no longer any parts there that we can continue to fix them. All we're doing is managing them. Both at William Blount and Heritage, we have a number of issues with our parking lot. They desperately need to be repaved and restriped, both parking lots. A great example would be just to go into the back parking lot at Heritage High School. You'll find a whole lot more grass than you will asphalt. That's a good key sign that we've got to do something. It just doesn't look like we care. And so it's an important part of upkeeping of our buildings. We have an energy management system in place called Novar. And it is essentially, I wouldn't say it's non-operational. I just say it's marginally operational. And what I mean by that is it's not adequately managing our energy system. We're losing money because we don't have adequacy at the energy management level. And a lot of this is around HVAC, of course, but you could go to William Blount or Heritage, and I could take you tomorrow and I could show you one classroom where it's 80 degrees and take you right next door and we have a classroom that's 56 degrees. We don't have an adequate source to manage that issue. And that does not make for a very good, conducive learning environment either. It doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. We have that reality in our two high schools. We have that reality in some of our other schools too. Maybe not to that degree, but we definitely have system-wide energy management. So we plan to invest money in that, and we believe by doing that, we also will reap a great deal of cost savings around utilities in the future. And then EMS, Eagleton Middle, has an HVAC issue as well. A couple of things you don't see on here, which is in year 2, is Porter has an old boiler that just barely passes inspection each year. And if the person came in and said you're not going to be able to use it, we essentially would be relocating students, most likely. So we're on the last leg of that. We are essentially behind in the area of roofs and HVAC. That's where we have our greatest need, and what I think is reflected on our capital improvement plan over the next 5 years is to really play catch up. And this establishment of Capital Education Fund 189 allows us to play catch up, and maybe play catch up in a little bit more robust way, because it's established. It grew out of an understanding of the case in McMinn County, where McMinn County's been doing this practice for quite a number of years, and the Court of Appeals ruled that they can have an education capital fund for major capital, and they don't have to appropriate funds for the city systems as a result of that, just in that one fund. And what does that mean to us? It means that we can actually spend a dollar for dollar related to those capital improvement projects, as opposed to 60 cents. If we were spending that money out of our 141, we would only have 60 cents on the dollar related to that. So we feel like that it has efficiency as well as a great deal of just makes some good sense for the taxpayer as it relates to using a dollar for dollar for our capital improvement needs. So in closing, we respectfully submit our budget request of $86,404 and include our request to initiate a capital improvement fund 189 for the purpose of funding our capital improvement needs in 15-16. Now, what kind of questions do you have for me? Was it my speech or was it? Oh, okay.
Dr. Brett, I have one question as it relates to your advanced manufacturing program.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that there were some additional resources that would be needed.
Yeah.
What might that be?
Well, we're writing some grants for equipment specifically, because there's a number of pieces of equipment that we would like to have on site that our students would train on. So I could be more specific with you and give you a breakdown of what that is. I just need to get my head wrapped around that and give that to you. But specifically, that's what it is. It's just mainly resources for the classroom. And we've written a couple of grants, but I'm not sure that all of that will go as far as what it needs to.
And if the grants don't come through, your plan is?
Well, at this point in time, we are going to do our stage 1 implementation of an advanced manufacturing program, even if we don't get that. And I believe we're going to get at least 1 or 2 of those things and maybe get a couple of pieces of equipment in there. But that's the plan at this point in time. We may have to piecemeal this in over a period of 2 or 3 years. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Capital line item 189, is that part of the overall increase in the budget also? Because I noticed that you actually increased that capital from about $250,000 to 2.2. Did you pull some of that from the other line items in the budget, or is this an increase in the overall budget?
Is that in our overall, Troy?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Could you repeat? I couldn't hear.
Line item 189, where we're establishing that capital projects revenue at 2.2 million. I noticed that regular capital outlay, you've pulled it out of the regular capital outlay, but at that point you only had about $250,000 and you're going to 2.2 million. Is that 2.2 million, is that part of this $86 million increase?
No, sir. That's it. That's a separate, in Fund 189, that would be a separate budget request. The 2.2 million for education capital project out of Fund 189 to be funded with taking 7 property tax cents and shifting to that fund, right, and balancing that budget.
The $250,000's also disappearing, so you're moving it over there too. Is that correct?
The $250,000, help me where you're seeing that, please.
176, 100.
100. Is that an account number?
Yeah. I noticed you didn't fund that at all this year. Is that part of it? Are you relying on the 7 cents for the full 2.2 million? Or are you
Yes.
Are you pulling any of that? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Britt.
Mr. Mayor,
sales tax.
if I could just follow up, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, that I think part of that, what we had in the budget in terms of capital outlay, some of that's just what I would consider small. This 189 is for major capital. I didn't know. Just wanted to
Okay.
clarify there. I'm sorry, Commissioner Moon.
That's okay. local sales tax revenue, 13,000,008, 20% increase over last year's estimate. I'm sure that was due to the sales tax referendum, but how comfortable do you feel that you'll meet that projection?
Well, I rely on our fiscal director, Mr. Troy Logan, to sort of guide that conversation around the office. So I'll let him answer that question.
Well, I'm as comfortable as I can be. I can't predict the economy and how well we'll do next year, but that number is based on a couple of things. One, looking at actual sales tax revenues to date and the growth that we've seen in the current year before seeing that new sales tax revenue next year, and forecasting or estimating what we think our total revenues will be this year. And they're doing fairly well. And taking that number and adding 2% growth to that, then adding about 2.3 million for the estimated new sales tax revenues that we should begin to receive actually in August of next year or this year.
So you don't see a large adjustment around June. You feel fairly comfortable this is going to be pretty much the targeted number.
I feel comfortable with it. I'm constantly looking at that number, and we will look at it and revise it every month as we need to. What I would probably I will do, and I would do this anyway, but I will go work with, and I'll call the trustee's office and talk to them. I'll visit with Mr. Vineyard, get input from both of them, and looking at the number and saying, does the number as I've calculated, does it make sense from what they know? And so they're helpful in guiding with that number as well.
So also earlier, there was a number given for funding deficit, a little over $1,100,000, but we're projecting $800,000 use of fund balance in this budget.
Yes, sir. Well, I think, Mr. Brett, the net budget shortfall or deficit, or however you want to call it, in Fund 141 is $1,704,000. And that is even after budgeting $800,000 use of fund balance. Yes, sir.
One more question. Count 72,310. 500,189. You've got what, 7 school board members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we're budgeting $100,000 for staff for the school board.
That number is actually not staff.
Okay,
That number represents
help me out.
what we call supplemental wages that are paid to employees that may work at a school for a ball game, a basketball game, a football game, or a banquet or something like that. And what happens is the school generally pays for those extra hours worked. So there's a revenue account on the revenue side where we receipt a check from a school where they're paying for a custodian to work 3 hours after school for a ball game. And then because we have to turn around and pay that money to that employee in their paycheck. So the revenue comes into us on the revenue side. We pay it out of this account.
So
That's not a
that's
particular.
assigned to the Board of Education, but it's kind of a misnomer. It's not.
I would probably agree with that. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
The board, well, you probably weren't asking about the board fees, but that's the next line item. Okay. Okay, yes.
Any other questions?
Any more questions for Mr. Britt?
On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present our budget to you tonight and respectfully ask for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Highway Department. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, budget members. Seems like we do this every year, and I don't want to follow the schools again, so my trivial little budget, y'all just go ahead and make a motion to pass it, and let's go on. So, I would like to take an opportunity to thank you to present my 15-16 year budget. With the new members in the Budget Committee, welcome. I feel that it's important to give you a little bit of history of our department and what we've done with our operations. Since 2012, the Highway Department has undergone a massive departmental restructuring that will be completed in this 15-16 budget year. Since 2012, our department has consolidated 26 positions in our workforce, reducing our employee count from 74 to 48 over 3 years, resulting in a 35% decrease in staff. This is to honor the request of our citizens. We have literally asked each employee to step up and essentially do almost the work of two employees. During the restructure process, we reviewed our employee strengths and moved them into positions that will best serve the department and the citizens. In turn, the employees are happier and positions are better suited for, which increases the production of the department as a whole. By making the above mentioned changes and analyzing every function of our department to see where we can reduce costs and increase productivity, we have successfully implemented several cost-effective operational changes that has allowed us to do just that. We are pleased to report that our department continues to work within the current budget approved for us, and the Highway Department staff is committed to providing the citizens with prompt, courteous, professional, and skilled services. In fact, our productivity has almost doubled. With that said, I will not ask for a budget increase this year, despite the fact that the Highway Department does not receive property tax revenues, so our budget has no effect on the property tax rate. My priority continues to be the citizens' roads needs. My department will continue to do our very best to serve our citizens with the resources we currently have to work with. Tonight, I'm here to highlight a few of the significant changes in our request to assist you in the review of our budget. Any questions, feel free to contact me. My Finance Director, Julie Talbot, will answer any questions you might have. We start off with 61,000 cost center, that's administration. The significant change in this, and you're going to hear this quite a bit, is work comp. That increase in that cost center is up $4,418. And it's due to a surcharge that we have to incorporate into our budget. This will be, I think, the second year now. 62,000 is our roads and bridges. We've done some significant changes in that. Line items 140 to 189 are all different due to the completion of department restructure. We moved staff around to better accommodate the needs of the department and utilize existing employee skills. Cost center 65,000 was engineering, has been combined with this cost center upon the arrival of our new assistant, Lieutenant Colonel Chico Messer, who is a civil engineer. It only serves that he oversees that department. Again, lines 513 in 62 cost center has increased $97,833 due to the second year of a rate surcharge increase in work comp. 726 cost center has increased $91,804. That's higher to utilize the state aid funds available this year. As you all know, I told part of it last year, our state aid bridge monies through the Bridge Relief Act of 214, the state passed a bill that drops our match from 20% to 2%. That goes through next year. This year, there is the Road Relief Act of 215. That's taking our state aid paving and dropping the 25% match to a 2% match. So we will be utilizing those two cost centers and those two items very heavily over the next 2 years. 63,100 is our maintenance of equipment. Line 141, we've eliminated the foreman's position. With bringing on our assistant, we felt there's no need to be paying another foreman. We have 6 employees back there, mechanics and welders. Assistant superintendent oversees the daily operations of the shop. Again, line 513, work comp increase in that line item is $11,558 due to the second year surcharge. 68,000 is capital. We've taken the savings we've made through our staffing cuts and restructure our department and placed it into capital. After going over our equipment and reviewing what has happened to it over the years, our equipment is old. The salt has done a number on it. We're going to end up with some dump truck bodies laying on the road if we don't start replacing it. They're just totally eat up with rust. So made some pretty hard decisions on that this year, and we're going to have to start getting rid of some of that old stuff that we've used for many, many years. So we started in that on our cost on 68 cost center. Overall review of everything, $113,809 increase in work comp. We're not asking for additional funding for that. $91,804 increase in state aid. That'll utilize appropriations, hoping that it'll stay with us, but I'm afraid that's going to leave us pretty soon. I think the state's going to pull that away. We put in our budget a 5% merit raise for the employees. I don't know about Evergreen, what it's going to do. We've had studies before. I don't know what's going to happen with it. So I'm like the other departments. I feel our employees, with the additional workload that they have taken on, definitely need a pay increase this year. We're not asking for additional monies for this pay increase. Overall, our budget appears to be $240,000 higher than last year. However, that 240, if the older members will remember, they took $240,000 of the cable franchise fee and put it in a fund strictly for the match on our bridges. That was in Fund 176. We're putting everything over into 131, so we felt that revenue ought to reflect in 131. So that is the difference in our two figures on our budget this year. Basically, it's the same budget other than the moving of what was already there over into it for this coming year. Overall, there's no increase. I would respectfully ask, since we're not in the property tax roll, that my budget be passed. If there's any questions, I'll try my best to answer them for you.
Any questions?
Those of you that are in the county districts, bear with us. We're cleaning up. This winter's been rough. Potholes are everywhere. Trees are down. To date, we have hauled roughly some 124 tandem loads of brush. FEMA's coming in. We're going to get some reimbursement back from some of this stuff. So hopefully we can get that back and then get some money back into asphalt. A whole lot rather see us paving than patching potholes. But it just, this winter just absolutely tore roads all to pieces. So bear with us on that.
Any questions?
I have just one.
Yes, ma'am.
As you look at replacing your old equipment as it goes down, are you looking at comparable prices for leasing versus buy?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Norman Newton, when he was attorney, he looked into that. The county's makeup and structure of county government, we have to buy. I wish I could. The lease purchase is something good. I like it, but I can have Mr. Garrett to look at it again. But if I'm not mistaken, that's what Mr. Newton looked up and found for us several years ago. We've already explored that. Thank you.
Questions?
Any more?
You told me once before, but how many miles of asphalt does this budget allow you to repave this year?
We're looking, this budget right here, we're looking roughly at about between 15 and 17.
So based on that number, though, the average life, I believe, is 13 to 15 years on
Anymore with EPA, the contract taken out of their asphalt. It used to be you're looking at 20 years, but
So what's that going to do to us in the next 5 to 10 years?
glad you broke. I believe it was last year, if I'm not mistaken, year before last one, we done a presentation to the budget committee where I recommend that we do a 15-year resurfacing program. Based on the numbers of miles that we have, we need to be paving roughly 50 miles a year to meet that 15-year program. We need to be looking at asphalt budget revenues in the tune of about $2 million a year in asphalt alone to be able to meet that 50-mile projection and then to stay on a 15-year resurfacing program. My recommendation, I'll push it till the day I'm gone, but our roads are going down. We're pushing the industrial board to bring industry in here. Folks without infrastructure, you're backing up. We're not going to get the quality of industry that we've seen in the past. And people want their people to be able to move freely, to be able to move easily. And until we start addressing the infrastructure of Blount County, then we're going to lose out on industry coming here. That's a freebie.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Ed.
Next on the list, we have the courthouse and jail maintenance. Randy?
This is on page 81 in your packet. I'm looking at the revenues first. If you'll notice, this is accounted for in a special revenue fund, 112. It can only be spent on the courthouse and or the jail. It is funded through fees that we collect through General Sessions Court and Circuit Court. So it's a flat dollar amount per case on court costs that we receive. So for next year, we're projecting almost $180,000 worth of revenue for next year. Then if you'll flip up to the expenses, which are on the preceding page on page 80, we're showing a like amount of building improvements. We have a list of the projects in here. We've got about, it's like everything else we've got in county government, we've got a lot more needs than what we've got sources to fund. But we're starting to address some of those things. I don't know if any of you've noticed, but we fixed the roof on the courthouse, the old part of the courthouse this past year. And then we've addressed the leaks that were in the commission chamber in the room that we meet in monthly. And we got those addressed once we got the roof fixed. So those are the types of projects. We're also looking at addressing the windows. We have some lintels over the windows that are failing in different parts of both the 50-something edition, 54 edition, I think, and then we've got some issues in the 74 edition to the courthouse that are being addressed. And then we have issues that come up from time to time where we've got failures over at the jail that we have to address out of this as well. Yes, we fixed the roof. We had some major leaks a year ago at the Justice Center where we were literally putting like plastic swimming pools in the ceiling to catch the leaks, not buckets, but swimming pools. Now, you can ask yourself the question, how do we get those down with water in them? I don't know the answer to that, but we had some major issues there. But we do have a work program that we're addressing. We try to keep some of that flexible because there, from time to time, when you've got as many, the age variance that we have on the buildings ranging, the newest building is the jail, and the oldest building is the main part of the courthouse. And I can tell you that $180,000 doesn't begin to address all the needs that we have. We've got to fix some issues in the basement of the courthouse, the old part of the courthouse, where we have some water issues there as well that we've got to address. Any questions on the courthouse and jail maintenance fund? Any questions for Randy? Moving on, Beer Board. This is page 82. And this is nothing more than publication fees that we pay. And it appears that this $200 is going to be light compared to where we think we'll end this year. So we may need to bump that up a couple, $300, but we can deal with that at a later date. It's just, to be honest with you, I don't know why the state wants us to account for this separately, but we have to. So. Any questions on that? Moving on, Budget Finance Committee, no increases there. And this same thing, this is basically just publication fees for the public meeting notices that we provide. Any questions on that? Moving on to other general administration. I guess in a perfect world, I wouldn't probably account for a lot of this stuff the way it is. We are, there have been past actions, as I understand it when I got here, as to why we do some of these things the way we do them. In general, think about this account as being the way we account for things that cross different departments of county government. For example, our Verizon bill for all of our data, mobile data and telephone charges are all accounted for here. You won't see that in all the operational departments. And my understanding is that was precipitated by County Commission a few years ago. They wanted to see it that way rather than put it in the operating units, which tends to make more sense to me, but we've not changed that. The first account, we have retiree insurance across county government that is provided for here, and we're estimating that to be at $192,000 for next year. And that is that's the cost associated with people that have notified us that they anticipate to retire at some point in time during this year that's given to us by our HR department. The audit services, the county is audited by the comptroller's office. That's an estimate of the fee that they project for next year. Susan and her staff were able to cut some time off the engagement last year, which I think is probably the reason that we're not anticipating a fee increase from the comptroller's office, because we had the audit done, 3-4 weeks ahead of time this year. So the amount of time they had to spend on it was not as great as what it was the previous year. And that's one way we can kind of influence that number, but that's estimated to be at $38,000 for the coming year. The communication number, that's what I gave you on what our Verizon bill is for the year. One thing we do require departments to do, if they were to, for example, want to use iPads for inspections or something like that, and we would require them to buy those out of their own operating budget and pay for the maintenance, pay for the monthly data fees as a cost of doing business out of their operating budget. That would be an exception to the way we handle everything else. Let's see. Legal services. To be honest with you, this one's growing. I guess as we have more people interested in government and they make more inquiries that are legal in their nature, it drives up the cost of what we pay for legal services. So this is a function not of a rate increase as much as it's a time increase. Oh, it can range anywhere from interpretations of the open records law to zoning issues. It can be public notice issues that may arise from time to time, and just the legality of where we're tracking certain court cases that may impact the county. Requests we may get that we don't know the answer to that could turn into litigation. We present those to our attorney to make sure that we are appropriately handling those matters. And we do not have in case you didn't know, we do not have a legal staff that are employees of the county. We are actually outsourcing this service. So I've been tickled to death in my former life if we could have gotten by with this inexpensively with legal services. That would have been about a monthly charge.
Looking down through there, does anyone have any questions about any line item on there in particular? That's my question. Maybe about.
Liability insurance. 13-14 budget to 15-16 budget is significant. Drop. That costs the
No, that is a function of our experience. Don would tell you that we're doing much better in, I guess, on the preventive side of things to mitigate some of our liability, and we're just now starting to see some benefit of that over the last couple of years. And as Highway Superintendent mentioned, we're seeing some increases basically on workers' comp and some other areas. So
Is there any discussion or question on any of these other line items? No, we're going to move on. GIS budget.
page 86. This is a three-party agreement, an interlocal agreement, if you will, between the city of Maryville, city of Alcoa, and Blount County. It's our geographic information systems, our mapping system that houses a lot of data and information that is very functional for us as we make policy decisions. Looks like our funding request this year is $101,873, and then the total budget is $305,618. So it's basically a flat budget from last year. It's staffed by Maryville, and then Maryville pays for a portion, Blount County pays for a portion, and then Alcoa pays for a portion. So this is where you would see utilities of all kinds throughout the county. For planning purposes, it's a very important resource. You would see products of that, for example, on commission, when zoning matters come up or planning matters come up, they reference a lot of the mapping and stuff comes off this system.
It also funds our fiber optic.
Yes. The fiber that we have that connects different public facilities, we built in a mechanism here where we're replacing that with a fee structure that when its useful life is used up and needs to be replaced, we've already got the money in place to replace it. We don't have to wait and come and ask for funding.
Any questions on the GIS budget?
Page 87. This is where we account for, it's called contracts with private agencies. That's the appropriate account under the state's chart of accounts that we would use. As you can see under that, we fund local fire departments. There are 6 of them, and you can see where this is where we fund Blount County Fire Department, hazmat unit for Blount County Fire, Seymour Volunteer Fire Department, Friendsville, Greenback, and Townsend Fire Departments. And I can tell you that there's probably not a one of those that wouldn't be here asking you for more funding, but we had requested that everybody stay as flat in their requests as they possibly could.
Any questions or discussion on the fire prevention?
My assumption is they fall under the umbrella of Blount County. Because all these other communities, Seymour, Friendsville, Greenback, and Townsend, they made decisions. They had their own volunteer fire agencies. I know there's a lot of attention given to, quote, not-for-profit status, but most of these agencies would also be not-for-profit. Not all, most are. I'm a Seymour, Friendsville, Greenback, and Townsend. I'm certain they're all 501c3s or some variation there.
Speaking from experience, very good with you, probably have a truck. The hose on one truck.
Probably in public service, other than some pieces of equipment that the highway department might have, I can assure you that all these pieces would be some of the more expensive pieces of capital outlay you can have in public service.
Discussion on that. One is not. Other local welfare services.
Page 88. This is called contracts with private agency, and this is an expense, and then we also get a grant to pay for this, but we have to record the expense on our books and also the revenue. But this is funding that we give to that we pay the Helen Ross McNabb Center to perform services for us, I think related to our juvenile detention. Yes. As I understand it, it's a requirement under the law, which is why the state passes money through to the local governments.
Discussion or question on that item. Moving on then to Fund 101.
And that starts on page 89. And what we've done, if you'll just note the note column to the right-hand side, this kind of gives you the assignment of what area of county government is responsible for each of these revenue sources. I can tell you that before between now and the time that you will act to make a recommendation that you'll forward on to the full commission, the projections that we'll show for fiscal 14 and 15, the current year, will change. These estimates were based on actuals as of the end of January, I believe. We will make another stab at projecting year end at the close of March business. And that's what we'll base our final estimates on, that we'll provide you here in a couple of weeks. And then that potentially would reflect changes in the estimates that we'll make for 15, 16. We made no assumption whatsoever on the impact of the largest revenue here is obviously the property tax. The basis for the under the statute, a mayor is to recommend the value of a penny by March 15, which we've done, and you've got in your packet. We estimated that there was just about $5.8 million worth of true growth in the property tax base, which is not calculated as a part of the reappraisal process. In other words, natural growth in the tax base, like new growth, you do not, it gets excluded from the reappraisal calculation. So you get benefit of that. So we've estimated almost $6 million in new growth, and we are not making any assumption about reappraisal. So we calculated the penny as moving from $312,500 to $317,500, and that assumes a 95% collection rate on property taxes. We've actually been hitting about a little better than 96% for the last 2 years. We track that, the trustee tracks that on a monthly basis, and we may or may not make a recommendation to you that we increase that for next year. The one thing, and it may or may not stand out to you, but we are very heavily dependent on the property tax. You'll note here, most local governments get some benefit from sales tax. So the reason I bring that up is we have very little elasticity in our revenue base. It is totally dependent on the growth in the property values of the county. Most of the other fees that you see are somehow related to the court system. So it's the taxes that a lot of the fee offices generate that we live off of to fund county government. And the only reason I bring it up, if you wanted to compare us to a lot of other counties, you have to be mindful that you don't need to look at the bottom line. You need to look at how their revenue stream is made up. So some of them may have a wheel tax. Some of them, you have 55 counties, I think, out of the 95 counties that have wheel taxes. You have cities that have wheel taxes. You've got counties that have sales taxes. And there's, those are the types of things where you get elasticity in your tax base that you have to be careful when you're comparing different locations. And on most of the court fees and costs, those are in taxes, litigation taxes, what they go by. Most of those are set by the legislature. And then the legislature authorizes you up to a certain amount, and then the local governments typically have to act either as a city council or a county commission to adopt those rates. Bill's already. On the highway superintendent mentioned previously, if you'll look at line 411400 cable TV franchise fee. That is just the portion that the general fund receives. He has requested that the highway fund keep 240,000. So cable fees generate about $740,000 in total. Yes. And there's been some discussion about the state actually taking this over and then remitting it back to local governments, but CTAS has not been able to give us any clarification on that as of right now.
Checked when we were down for government day, Randy, and now it appears it's going to go beyond what they originally thought the sunset was going to be. That's feedback I got.
So there would be no change on the way we handle it now? Is that what that means?
They would still, the Cable Franchise Authority would still be in place at least through 16.
Okay.
And we thought it would maybe sunset this fiscal year.
But it has not, and that's consistent with what CTAS had told us. Sure. Yes, that's the hall income tax. That is a tax on passive income, basically dividends and interest expense or interest income. And there's been some discussion in the legislature this year about actually eliminating that. I think the governor's position is let's not do it just yet. Let's make sure we get a handle on it. I'll give you one perspective on that. This is a tax. If you look at the source of the revenue, it's for people who have investments that earn dividends and interest income. So if you consider the source of who might be paying that, if you were to lose that revenue stream, you have to make it up somehow, some way. If you assume the state legislature does away with the tax, then in theory, you're coming back and taxing everyone through the property tax to make up for that. So just from a policy standpoint, just be aware of that. That's one perspective. That's correct. By the way, that tax has been on the books since the 30s, I believe. What was the number again? Oh, that's where we get reimbursed for prisoners. Yeah. We're projecting a decrease, but that's one of those that once we check the census and see what our census has actually been and what we anticipate billing the state and the feds, those revenues could go up. But it is a semblance of a reimbursement of some of our costs. If you look at 469,150, that estimate is 1.3 million. And if you look at the account that Commissioner Cole just identified, which is 479,900 other direct federal revenue, that's at 1.1. So that's 2.4 million. So it's almost 8 cents, the equivalent of 8 cents on the property tax rate. While we're on that page 92, the use of fund balance of $6,710,313 at line 489,900. I would strongly encourage you to not do that, because we've already been forewarned by Standard & Poor's. If our fund balance drops below 15%, then they will lower our credit rating. But I have to disclose it this way to balance the budget. I'm telling you that it would take $6.7 million in fund balance to balance the budget. But that's based on our January close. Correct. Yes. It's not going to change $6.7 million, but it'll change.
While we're there, 15%
No, they included funds other than the general fund. I will give you that information.
It's not a logical number.
No, it's based on the way that our audit is structured, and that's the way they look at it.
There's a couple other categories I'm sure we know about.
Yes, they will actually look at it in gross. While we're on that last page, the first line, 477,150 tax credit bond rebate. This is an illustration when the federal government decided they wanted to inject stimulus into the economy. One of the ways that local government was impacted is they allowed you to issue bonds for capital projects, and then they rebated the interest on those bonds back to the local governments. That was the good news. The bad news is it was not exempt from sequestration. So when Congress decided to implement or institute sequestration, we have had 2 reductions since then. So that debt has a net cost to the county now. It is no longer a wash. Yeah, something like that. Sequestration was The last hit was, I think, less than 6% reduction. And it's been 2 consecutive years we've had that happen. We have to pay it, and then they rebate us. We get a transfer, a wire transfer from the Internal Revenue Service through the state. So the state serves as the clearinghouse for all governments in the state of Tennessee. That's correct. And we did for my first year here, and in the last 2 years, we've had a reduction because of sequestration. Yes, that's correct. QSCAB is an acronym for Qualified School Construction Bonds, not to be confused with QZAB. Then the other item that is worth noting on that page is the donation section there. It's not a lot of money, but the way we have to account for the contributions and donations that we receive from the Smoky Mountain Animal Care Foundation is we record that as a revenue. We don't net that against expenses. And then you have a separate account that accounts for that $180,000 worth of expenses separate from the day-to-day operations of the animal shelter or the animal center. Then the donation line above that is for gifts and donations that we receive outside of the foundation. People that want to be benefactors of what goes on there. And Commission had approved a resolution, I believe, a year ago that basically allows us to carry that money forward. It is to be spent only on capital. And by way of, I guess, informing the new members of the committee, for the last couple of years, I think I've been pretty consistent in reminding everyone that we can't live off of fund balance. We've used fund balance for the last 2 fiscal years, including the current year, to balance our budget. And I've been on record as saying we ought to be generating revenue every year to cover our annual operating expenses and not using fund balance except for those things that are non-recurring in nature, like capital. And most of that has happened due to county commission moving money from the general county portion of the property tax rate to education. And that's what did it. Absolutely.
Now I'll ask if there's any input on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll have a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.